Hey everyone, Swiss Cheese here. In this video, I'll be showing you one of the methods I developed for the creation of Brim objects, designed for the selective placement of brims in Slicer. This method and others have been available for you to figure out since September 1st of 2021, with the release of PrusaSlicer 2.4 Alpha 1. For this demonstration, I'll be using the Windows version of PrusaSlicer 2.7.1. Over the years, I've developed multiple variations of this with varying robustness and complexity. However, today I'll be demonstrating only the most basic of them, with the hope that it propagates understanding for a wide range of user skill levels. Even then, this method can be considered advanced. It requires that Slicer be in expert mode and that you have a better than average understanding of the workings in Slicer. If you're new to Slicer, this may be beyond your current level of understanding. However, I would urge you to follow along, pause and rewind if needed, and learn from your results. Hopefully, those of you that need to place brims selectively will find this technique as useful as I do. Now let's get to the lesson. So we're going to start by adding an object. Let's add a cylinder for this demonstration. And we're going to right-click on our object, and we're going to add a part, another cylinder. And let's change that added part's dimensions to 1.75 millimeters, and then click on non-uniform scaling, and we'll go over here and drop it down in the Z to 0.2 and then drop it to the bed. Now we're going to go and select our shape cylinder, the original shape that we created, and we're going to change the scale on that to 18 and non-uniform scale again, and to make that 0.2 in the Z and drop it to the bed. And with that still selected, we're going to Control C, Control V, and make a copy. And we are going to right click on that copy and change type to a negative volume. Select OK. Let's go back to our scaling and change the X and Y scale to 17.9. 17.9. And that should be pretty good now. Now let's select our generic cylinder, and we're going to rename the generic cylinder to handle. And with that still selected, we'll just drag that into a better position here. The next thing we need to do is go into our object properties. So we'll go up here and select the main object, and we will right click on that and go to add settings, and we're going to add a skirt and brim to this. And you should put all three settings in there because we can utilize those later to help us control our brim. And the other thing we want to do right now is turn our brim to an inner brim only and change it to 13 millimeters. We can leave the brim separation gap alone for now. Let's go ahead and slice this and see what happens. So as you see now, our brim handle shows up. We still have our brim here, and the brim's just sitting there all nice and pretty. It's exactly what we were hoping for. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is add this brim to something. And in this particular case, I think I'm just going to go into the gallery real quick, and I'm going to add a shape from the gallery, and I'm going to go ahead and make that the frog and say OK. And there's our frog. Let's select our brim now and move our brim over to our frog. Let's see what we've got here, and slice. And you'll see now that we have a warning down here, detected print stability issue, and well, that's just something that the frog always generates, no matter what. It's one of the reasons that the frog needs a brim. However, the usual brim for the frog does the entire frog's body, everything, all the way underneath and all the toes, all of that. Really, it doesn't need that. The only place that this frog actually needs any stability is in these initial legs, because somewhere around 8 millimeters, it's actually freestanding that entire time, and sometimes, depending on what type of sheet or the condition of your sheet or your print settings, these legs may come off, and the brim can stop that. So let's go ahead and close that, just get it out of the way. I'd love if there was a way for us to, as experts, to be able to turn off those warnings, since we really don't need to see them. So currently we have the frog's foot set up. Now my experience is that when there's brim in between these tiny little frog toes, because this isn't a very big model, it's actually quite difficult, and if you were going to produce a lot of these, it could be time consuming to take all of that brim material out of there. And one of the things that we have the advantage of doing with a brim object is going in here and adjusting the area inside. We can go to our skirt and brim settings right here right now and just change this. I'm going to make a guess here. I'm going to say 5 to a 5, and let's slice it. And now you see that we have a lot less material in the toes there, and we're pretty much only on the outskirts of the toes. I might actually even change this to something a little less, or I might just go ahead and just adjust the brim out a little bit so that it's touching the front toe less. I think that's a little too much. Let's go back a bit. Slice. And I'm much happier with that. And now that I've got this one, what I can do is I can just go back into my edit view, and I can copy and paste with that brim selected another one. And I can drag that one over here and place it how I like. Let's go right there, almost to the back of the toe, and see what that does for us. I think that's okay as far as this goes. Now, one of the things that I want to show you, I'm going to go all the way down into the first layer here, is that currently all of the brim layers, even though they're wrapping around the toe, are acting just as if they were a perimeter. So they're very close. There's no brim separation there. And even if we go up here and we look at our brim separation, you see nothing. But this isn't where that's controlled. This is actually controlled in print settings, skirt and brim, and it's actually controlled here for the entire table. So what we can do is we can go in and set our brim width, and I usually set that to 0.01, and you do my brim separation at 0.03. And if we reslice this, you'll see now that there is a small brim separation going on around the frog's toes, and that's exactly what we want. And just to demonstrate this a little more aggressively, I'll do this. I'll make it a 0.5 millimeter, and let's see how that slices out now. And see, this is where that's controlled. So we're going to go ahead and change this back to 0.3, and let's slice. And you'll see that this is affecting both brims, even though those brims are actually two separate brim objects. And this gives us what we need to be able to slice this frog and knock the time way down on this frog. As you can see, our total brim print time is only 47 seconds. That's really pretty good. Later on, I'll do another video and I will show you how to cut that down even more and even have even less brim to take off. Now, we don't have to use just round brims or round pads. We can use any shape, and so I'm going to go ahead and select all of these. I'm going to move them over here for the moment. I'm sorry, my computer's chugging a little bit because of all the software I have running on it right now for making this video. And let's just get rid of this. And I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to make another brim. Another type of brim or shape of brim. And this time I think I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to add a box. And then I'm going to right click on the box, of course, and I'm going to add a part, and I'm going to add a cylinder. And once again, I'm going to scale the cylinder to 1.75 millimeters, and then non-uniform scale it down to 0.1 or 2, and drop it down to the bed. Now I'm going to go to the box shape, and I'm going to just scale that down to 0.2 and drop it down to the bed. I'm okay with the size of that box. And the next thing that I'm going to do is, with the box shape still selected, I'm going to right click, I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to copy and paste. Then I'm going to right click on the copy and pasted version of the box, and I'm going to change its type to a negative volume. And select OK. And now I'm just going to scale this down to 24.9 and 24.9 in the Y. Now I need to add properties to my box shape, so I'm going to go to my object. I'm going to add some properties, settings, skirt and brim, add them all. Now in this case they took on the skirt and brim settings from when we were in the skirt and brim types here. So we're going to go ahead and fix that right now. And we're just going to make this a 0, and we'll go ahead and make this, I'm going to guess 15 millimeters is probably pretty good. Fill that box up. And let's slice it. Oh, and change the brim to an inner brim only, and slice it. So now we have a very nice square brim here, and we can utilize that in exactly the same way as we were utilizing the pads that we made earlier. And you can do this with almost any shape. I'm going to go ahead and go here and change this to a handle. And move it over to the box a little so it's in someplace closer. I actually kind of like it right there. Now I'm going to select that as an object and just kind of get it out of the way. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to show you something. I'm going to now go in and I'm going to create another object. I'm going to create a box, and in this case I'm going to non-uniform scale the box to 320 by, I don't know, 6, and we'll just for the sake of this demonstration we'll make it 15 tall. And obviously that's too big for the bed, but it would give us an opportunity to be able to utilize this whole bed. And so if we're a little careful, we can kind of get that into a place where it just barely fits on the bed. But then the problem becomes, how do you add a brim to this? And so in this case, just so we don't conflict with our brim settings that are over here for the whole bed, I am going to select just the shape box, and I'm going to add brim settings to the shape box, the long one that we just constructed. And so I'm going to go in skirt and brim, and I'm going to give it everything it needs. And I'm not going to worry about all the fine-tuned settings. I'm just going to give it a brim width of 5, and I'm going to give it an outer brim because, well, that's what it needs. And let's slice it and see what happens. And lo and behold, it is outside of the print area. Now, we can actually fix this, but I'm not going to cover that in the scope of this video. So what I am going to do is go ahead and close that, get rid of these warnings again, these annoying warnings. And now I'm just going to take my brim object and I'm going to slide it up here, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on it. Let me press 1 and zoom in. And I'm going to just go ahead and use the handle and adjust my brim object until it just starts to go out of bounds, something like that. And I'm going to go ahead then and copy and paste that brim object. And I'm going to take this one down here, and I'm going to select its handle and just move it out of my way, probably right here. Select the object again, move it over, and let's zoom. And now we can place this just so. And that is it. I'm going to go to these skirt and brim settings and delete them because we don't need those anymore. And now just our original skirt and brim settings from printer settings, skirt and brim, will apply. So we'll go back over here and push slice. And you'll see now that we have a very handy brim taking care of all of our needs on the end of our boxes. And you know, if for some reason we weren't happy with this, we could also go up here and select one of these, and we could go ahead and copy and paste another one of it, and we'll just drag that over here. And we can now rotate it. I'm going to go ahead and do a top view so I can get this closer. I'm going to rotate it within some semblance of order so it kind of meets the shape of the box I'm trying to. That's pretty good. So we could just do something like that if we wanted to. In this case, I would even have one, I think, here, and then I would copy and paste another one. Whoops, and that's why we have the handle. Let me go ahead and select that box and use these. We can grab the handle here, and I would grab it over here and do something like that, and let's slice it. And so as you see, we now have some brims that are going to hold our end. We're not having to put a brim on the entire box, which could cause a problem, and we'll have less blemishes and less post-processing to do on this object after we're done with it. So let's discuss some of the advantages of this method. Obviously, you can place them wherever you want in whatever size or shape. And you can use them, right up to the very edges of the platter without worry. We demonstrated that in the previous section of this video. One thing I didn't show is that they can be saved, and I would think this is obvious, but just to demonstrate that, I'm going to go ahead and import an earlier saved version. There's my brims. I'm going to bring them in, and obviously they come in ready to go. They've sliced and can do everything we would require of a brim of this type. I'm just going to move them off the screen right now, and I'm going to go ahead and select the cylindrical brim, and I'm going to bring that in and place it, and I do not need the square brim, the box shape, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to go ahead and slice this brim that I just imported. And obviously it's too big for our need. And one of the things that we can do here in another level of control is we can just come in and we can change the brim separation. We can change the brim size. So in this case, I'm going to change the brim size to 5, and I'm going to go ahead and I think I'll change the brim separation to 5.5. And let's slice that and see what it looks like. That actually puts us in a pretty good place. And so you'll note that we were able to control the size of that brim without actually scaling the object size or doing anything of that nature. We had another level of control over this brim relative to making it fit our object the way that we wanted it to fit. And that's very important. And we have yet another level of control as well. So I can copy and paste this brim. Now I have another. I'm going to go back to my edit view. I'm going to take the new brim and I'm going to place that brim, which will share the same properties as that I copied and pasted it from, and see how that works out. And I think I might like to go ahead and adjust this a little bit. I'll take it to right about here and slice again. And I'm pretty happy with this. And so, as mentioned before, one of the things that you might note is that these brims are only taking 43 seconds to print, and they're only 1.4% of the overall print job. And that's a serious savings in material when you're talking about printing, say, 100 of these. There's also a cost of print time that you save with. And the big cost here is actually the post-processing time, and that's the best of all. We have to take that into consideration, the amount of time that it actually takes to remove these brims from the frog. It really adds up. And when we're talking about bigger projects where we use these, it becomes very important to have this functionality, and we're lucky that we do. Yet another advantage that we have using this method is that we can change the material type or color of our brims. I'll demonstrate. I'm going to go up here and start by changing what will end up being my default material to semi-flex, Nigiflex. The brims are going to print out of the default material. And I'm going to go to print settings, and I'm going to change the number of extruders to 2. I'm going to change my second material to Prusa PETG. And I'll go ahead and hit slice. And you'll see now that my brims are going to print out of TPU, and the rest of the frog will print out of Prusa PETG. And there's a little more that goes into this, but this was just a basic demonstration to show that this is possible. Moving on, I'm going to show you another use case in order that I might offer an alternative way to use the brims we've created, as well as demonstrate a potential issue and how to handle it. On the platter, you'll see that I've added an object, and this object could be a drawer organizer or a tray insert, something like that, whatever it is. I'm going to go ahead back into my top view. It's a prime candidate for brims. Most likely we would have some type of a warping issue with this. So let's go ahead and slice it, and currently I have the brims set to outer brims. And you'll see that the problem with this is that the outer brims exceed the print area, and so it puts off an error. And even if we fixed this and we only had the brims in this area here or over to this side, that's probably not going to be adequate to secure this particular object. And so let's go ahead and switch now, and let's make these inner brims. That would seem to be the next logical course of action here, and let's slice. And sure, that fixes our problem relative to going outside the print area, but this becomes a post-processing nightmare. If I was doing more than one of these, I would probably just decide not to print them. And if I was in any type of production situation, I would have to have some other option to deal with this. And so the way that I would handle this is I would use selective brim placement for this. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the brims back to 0.01. And when we do this, especially in this area, this is for the entire platter. We're telling Slicer that every object on the platter that doesn't have its own brim settings is prepared to receive brims. But this will not produce brims. It simply tells the object that it can receive a brim. So let's go ahead now and go into our edit mode, and you'll see that I've already brought in one of our brims that we created earlier. And I'm going to go ahead and drag this in and place it. And I would not normally place these brims where you're going to see me put them now, but for the sake of this demonstration, I want to put them there. And you might have noticed earlier on in this tutorial that I was copying and pasting. But this time I'm going to create an instance, and I'm going to take that instance and I'm going to place it over here. And let's go ahead and slice. And you'll see that our instance is sliced fine. We have a nice even section of our placed brims, and I want to go ahead and add some more because obviously that's not enough brim to take care of this object. So let's tab back into our edit mode and let's create another brim. I'm going to take it down and place it, and I'm going to slice this. And you may notice that the brims did not slice properly. In fact, upon the third instance, they broke. Fortunately, there's a very easy fix for this. And also, fortunately, this only happens with inner brims when we use them in this fashion. And the fix for this is quite simple. We're going to go ahead and rotate the last instance. And I'm going to reposition it just a little bit. And let's slice. And upon rotation of the last instance, the third instance, you see that it's fixed all of the brims. And we can continue on with this. I'm going to go ahead and make another instance of this brim and put it over here. And I'm going to go ahead and slice. And you'll notice now that the last two instances have failed. They've broken and they're not working properly. Let's tab back out and rotate and slice. And you'll notice now that the brims are repaired again. I'm going to go ahead and do this a couple of more times. So let's just make an instance and place it here, and I'll make another instance and I'll place it here, and I'm going to go ahead and slice. And now you'll notice that the last 3 instances have broken. So I'm going to go back into edit mode. I'm going to rotate, this time just 90 degrees, because it doesn't matter how much you rotate. Just rotating any amount at all will repair this problem. And you'll see now that all of our instances of our brims are working. And so if you do need to use these types of brims and you want to use them as instances, then this is something definitely to be aware of. By no means a deal killer. I have been using this for years now and have only ever had to a few times worry about rotating these. I don't even think about it. I just do it and everything works out for me. That said, this particular object has an even better way that we can work with it. We don't have to use the brim constructs that we made. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these instances and get back to my base brim. And I'm just going to take this over here to the side. And a better way to utilize our brims for an object like this is actually to do this. We're going to take the handle and we're going to select the negative volume, and we're just going to go ahead and delete them. And all that's going to be left now is our shape box and our brim properties that we applied to this object. And so that means an inner brim only and 14 millimeter brim width. We're going to change our inner brim to an outer brim only, and then we're going to go up to our object properties and we're going to resize this object. I'm going to take it down to 10, I think will be okay. And I'm going to go ahead and accept those. I'm going to non-uniform scale to bring this up to 0.2 in the Z. And now I'm going to take this box and I'm going to place it. I'm also going to switch to my orthographic view. I'm going to place this. This is going to help me with alignment. That's why I switched to orthographic. I've placed my brim where I want it to be. And I'm just going to create an instance and place that instance, create another instance, create another instance. We don't have to be too precise with this. The brims are going to do the work for us. All we have to do is get them within a reasonable distance. And I'm just going to place a few more of these. Create another instance, and another instance, and finally one last instance. And now, because these are instances, we don't have to do anything to all of them. We can just control one of them. And our last instance is fine for this. Now, I don't actually want these to be 10 millimeters. I want these to be very tiny. And so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and with my one instance selected, I'm going to go 0.45. That seems good to me. And I'll accept that. And then I'm going to non-uniform scale and turn the Z back into a 0.2. And I will accept that. And at this time, I can now slice. And as you can see, all of my instances have bound to the object that I wanted them to secure. I'll go ahead and flip this over so you can see. And we have our 0.03 brim separation going on here, and we have a nice solid brim. And these are going to hold this object, and they'll peel off just like any brim. Just so you can see, we still have control. I'll set this to a 0.5 millimeter, and let's just go ahead and slice that. And you'll see that that's the case with all of our brims. They're all going to respect that. Let's go back in and let's make this 0.03 again. And slice. And that really is all there is to it. And that's all I'm going to be covering in this video. I have more information about brims. If this video gets enough interest and enough people like it, I'll do another more in-depth version. These are the most basic thing that you can do relative to placing your brims selectively in Slicer. I do want to mention that you can't really do this in PrusaSlicer, and I love PrusaSlicer as well. I've been using it for quite some time, and I also use PrusaSlicer quite a bit. Unfortunately, PrusaSlicer is kind of locked down with regard to this, and this definitely is better relative to brim ears. Being able to place your brims selectively in any shape that you want to do is by far better. I have much more control over the way that my object is locked to the platter. I hope this helps you. Enjoy.